Millionaire CEO casually soothes a crying toddler mid-flight, only to freeze in shock as he realizes the child is his own son. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The first hint that something remarkable was about to happen on that cross-country flight came in the form of muffled sobs and a plaintive wail no one could ignore. High above the clouds, in the plush business-class cabin, the usually collected and poised CEO, Jared Bennett, found himself in unfamiliar territory, trying to soothe a distressed toddler. The little boy, no more than 3 years old, had been crying non-stop since takeoff, his bright cheeks stained with tears. And although Jared typically preferred calm, orderly surroundings, especially when preparing for an important meeting in Chicago, something about the child tugged at his heart more powerfully than he could explain. Jared shifted in his comfortable leather seat, momentarily setting aside the large file of documents for his upcoming merger deal. He was the type of businessman who never wasted a second. His entire life was a carefully curated schedule of board meetings, charity galas, and expansions into foreign markets. So, it was unusual for him to pause and notice a crying child, let alone be moved to help. Yet here he was, pulling out a crisp handkerchief and glancing at the little boy with genuine concern. "Hey, buddy," Jared murmured gently, crouching closer so the child could see he was speaking directly to him. "Long flight, huh?" He offered the handkerchief, unsure of whether toddlers even liked handkerchiefs or if they were still partial to stuffed animals. The boy sniffled, his tear-streaked eyes looking up in confusion. Jared gave a half-smile. "It's okay. Flying can be scary sometimes." The mother, who was seated just beside the toddler, looked up in surprise. She had been so absorbed in trying to calm her little boy that she hadn't noticed Jared leaning in, and that moment, when she lifted her gaze, felt like a jolt of electricity crackling through the air. Her eyes, a deep shade of hazel, were achingly familiar. Jared blinked, stunned by recognition. He knew those eyes. He knew the soft line of her jaw, the slight curve of her lips. Memories cascaded in, nearly knocking the breath out of him. He hadn't seen her in years. Could it really be? "Mia," he whispered. He could still recall the summer they met, her laughter echoing across a beach bonfire, the impulsive road trip they took, the way they whispered their dreams to each other under a blanket of stars. Life had led them onto separate paths, and that whirlwind romance had been left behind with nothing but a few old photographs to mark the time they'd spent together. But here she was, Mia Harris, looking both like the memory in his mind and yet utterly changed by the passage of years. Her hair, once dyed in vibrant colors, now fell in a simpler style past her shoulders. Her eyes, though still warm, carried the kind of tired worry that parents often wore. For a moment she just stared, her lips parting as though words might tumble out at any second. "Jared, She couldn't form a complete sentence. How could she explain everything that had happened in her life, especially with her son wailing at her side and the hum of an airplane filling her ears? The toddler's cries eased slightly, distracted perhaps by the sudden tension between the two adults. Jared found himself swallowing hard. He'd spent the last decade building an empire, one that spanned multiple cities and employed thousands. He prided himself on being unstoppable to the point that newspapers loved calling him the unstoppable CEO. And yet, looking into Mia's eyes and seeing that beautiful familiarity, he felt like a different man entirely. Your son," Jared said, his voice still hushed as if in a trance. "He's upset. Maybe I can help?" Mia let out a shaky breath, clearly torn between shock at seeing Jared and gratitude that he'd extended kindness to her child. She ran a comforting hand over the boy's hair and nodded. "I think he's just overwhelmed. It's his first big plane ride, and I'm sorry. We've disturbed everyone around us." Jared waved off her apology. Strangely, he wanted to tell her that hearing her child cry had never felt like a disturbance to him, more like a call to action. "Don't be sorry. Really. Let me see if I can cheer him up." There was a softness to his tone that felt foreign even to him. That confident corporate edge melted away in the presence of Mia and the little boy. He reached into his suit pocket, hoping for something that might amuse a young child. All he found was a gold pen embossed with the name of his corporation. With a self-deprecating smile, he offered it to the toddler. "It's not exactly a toy, but look, it twists open and closed. Kinda interesting, right?" He carefully showed the child how it worked, making sure the toddler didn't catch his fingers in the twisting mechanism. The boy's eyes grew round with curiosity as he slowly tried to mimic the twist. Then he giggled, a small, watery sound as the tears finally stopped. To Jared, the child's laughter felt like an unexpected gift. Mia, for her part, watched them quietly. She clutched her purse on her lap, knuckles turning white, her heart racing. Every second spent in Jared's presence reminded her of the love story that she had convinced herself was just youthful fancy, one that ended without closure. They had parted ways under complicated circumstances, and she never had the chance to tell him, well, everything. As Jared continued entertaining the toddler, showing him how to pretend the pen was a rocket ship going whoosh through the cabin, Mia felt the press of guilt and hidden truths. How could she just casually say, "Jared, that little boy is your son"? Would he even believe it? Would he see it as some opportunistic move now that he was a millionaire? She hadn't planned for this meeting. She'd never once tried to ask him for help, never reached out to him after discovering she was pregnant. Part of her had believed that letting him go was the right thing. Another part had been proud and independent, believing she could raise the child alone without stepping into Jared's high-stakes corporate universe. But life had a way of orchestrating collisions at the most unexpected times. And now that collision was unfolding 30,000 feet in the air. Jared gently handed the pen over to the toddler, who grasped it with determination, determined to emulate Jared's demonstration. Then Jared looked up at Mia again. Confusion, warmth, and 1,000 questions danced in his eyes. "I can't believe I'm seeing you. Of all the flights, of all the days." "I know," Mia murmured. She brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, trying and failing to steady her breathing. "I didn't think—" "That we'd run into each other," Jared supplied. His tone was gentle, with no trace of accusation. It was as though in that very moment, a wave of understanding passed between them, both realizing that destiny had stepped in where they hadn't. The announcement from the overhead speaker interrupted the emotional intensity. The flight attendant's calm voice reminded everyone to remain in their seats as they encountered mild turbulence. Mia reflexively wrapped an arm around her son, and Jared shifted closer, prepared to help. Suddenly the toddler reached out, tiny fingers splaying as if wanting reassurance from Jared as well. That simple, unguarded gesture seized Jared's heart. It was an instinctive trust, a reflex of closeness the boy displayed. Why did that move stir Jared so profoundly? Why did it feel so strangely right? He pressed his palm to the child's small hand, a wave of an indescribable feeling washing over him. Jared had always told himself he wasn't the paternal type. He was too busy, too focused, too single-minded about success. He was never father material, or at least that's what he had believed. Yet in the child's wide eyes and sweet face he saw a reflection of something he couldn't name, but which beckoned him nonetheless. He looked at Mia, voice hushed. "He's a remarkable little boy." Her eyes darted away, tears threatening to gather. "He's everything." Perhaps she was bracing for the question that lingered unspoken on Jared's lips. Or maybe she was recalling the exact day she'd realized that the child she carried would never know his father. Just as quickly, Mia forced a small smile, trying to keep the mood light. We're heading to Chicago for a visit with my sister. She lives out there. I'm between jobs right now." Jared nodded, absorbing her words while also noticing the faint lines of worry on her face. He had more questions, so many of them. Like why she'd never reached out to him when life got hard. Why, in the years since, they had drifted so far apart. But those inquiries could wait, at least until the boy was calmer and they weren't huddled awkwardly in an airplane seat. For now, Jared simply wanted to keep the boy smiling and help Mia breathe a little easier. He unfastened his watch, an expensive timepiece that beeped quietly with each hour's passing. He handed it over to the toddler, who grabbed it with gleeful fascination. "Sometimes it beeps," Jared explained, "like a little robot. You like robots?" The child nodded shyly, more tears drying in the corners of his eyes. Mia couldn't help noticing how gentle Jared's demeanor was, how natural he seemed, as though some paternal side of him had been awakened by chance. She remembered with a sharp pang that side of him back when they were young, the caretaker who insisted on carrying her groceries, who would stay up late brainstorming her art projects, who once even rescued an injured stray cat. He'd always had a hidden softness behind the businessman's facade. The flight attendant walked by, ready to reprimand them if seat belts weren't fastened, but froze when she recognized Jared, perhaps from a magazine cover or one of his high-profile public appearances. Her stern instruction melted into a polite smile, and she continued down the aisle. Jared's fame often preceded him, though he rarely bragged. He hardly needed to. His name was in headlines often enough. Mia sat in silence for a moment, fiddling with the edge of her son's small backpack. Her emotions swirled in a chaos of relief, fear, and guilt. How could she tell Jared the truth? How would he react? Would he see it as betrayal that she'd never told him about his son? Just as she mustered the courage to speak, the pilot's voice came over the intercom, instructing passengers to prepare for a potentially bumpy landing. They were starting their descent into Chicago earlier than expected. Jared instinctively placed a comforting hand on the toddler's shoulder, as though he'd been doing it forever. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't hold off the truth forever. One look at Jared, and she knew. He was bracing himself for a secret he already suspected. Something in the boy's features, maybe the shape of his eyes or the slight tilt of his smile, mirrored Jared's own. The plane trembled slightly, marking the end of the flight, but the beginning of a reality that neither Mia nor Jared could hide from anymore. The moment the wheels touched down at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Jared felt his entire world shift. Even from his seat, he glanced over at Mia and the little boy, still clutching that fancy pen as though he were protecting the most precious treasure he'd ever encountered. The pilot's voice droned on about local weather and taxi times, but Jared barely heard it. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, charged by the realization that fate had just carried him right into the path of a life he had never known existed. As passengers stood to retrieve their luggage from the overhead bins, Jared stayed put, watching Mia carefully buckle her son's jacket. It was only when Mia finally looked up, her cheeks flushed, that he shook himself out of his trance and rose to gather his carry-on bag. She tried a hesitant smile. "I guess we should move with the crowd," she said softly. Jared nodded, stepping aside so she and her son could walk into the aisle. The little boy gazed around with wide eyes, his small fingers curled around Jared's gold pen with utmost seriousness. Whenever the child glanced back at Jared, the man's heart constricted with a warmth he couldn't describe. Questions threatened to spill from his lips at every second. When was the boy born? Why had Mia said nothing? But he reined them in. An airplane aisle was hardly the place for revelations that could change 3 lives forever. When they finally reached the jet bridge, Mia paused, rummaging in her purse for the stroller's claim ticket. The flight attendants, noticing Jared Bennett, famous, well-groomed, the typical picture of success, tried to hurry things along, but Mia was too flustered to find the slip right away. The toddler, meanwhile, shifted from foot to foot, clearly restless from the hours in the air. Jard gently rested a palm on Mia's shoulder. "I've got it," he offered, producing his own ticket. He was used to delegating tasks, used to staff and personal assistants handling every detail of his day, but at that moment, taking care of Mia's minor inconvenience felt like a personal mission. One of the employees politely took the ticket and rushed off to retrieve the stroller. Mia stood there, chewing her lip in silence, her posture strained. The boy blinked up at Jared, and in that innocent gaze, Jard saw a glimmer of himself. A hint in the eyes, a shape in the nose, impossible yet so plainly there. "Look," Mia said finally, her voice subdued. "It's been years since we last spoke, but if you have time, maybe we could talk for a moment." She hesitated, as if making sure the child was preoccupied looking at the airplanes parked outside. "Just the two of us." Jared let out a slow breath. "Yes, absolutely." His tone was warm, but firm. He wanted that conversation more than anything right now. The CEO inside him needed clarity. The man inside him needed so much more. When the stroller arrived, Mia settled her little boy inside it, then glanced up at Jared. Her eyes flicked to the crowd milling around them. She knew they had to move. "I'm staying with my sister for a few days," she said. "She lives in Lincoln Park. Maybe we can meet somewhere?" Jared didn't hesitate. "I'll drive you, both of you." She shook her head, a faint color rising in her cheeks. "No, Jared, that's not necessary. We can take a cab or the train. I don't want to trouble you." But Jared's expression was resolute. "It's not trouble," he assured. "Honestly, I insist. I have a car waiting anyway." For a second, Mia looked ready to protest again, pride flaring, but then her gaze landed on her son, who was droopy-eyed and far too tired to endure another round of waiting and traveling. She softened. "All right, thank you." They made their way through the airport's bustling corridors, weaving past hurried travelers and echoing announcements. True to his word, Jared led them to a private driver waiting near the arrivals exit. The driver's eyes widened slightly at the sight of Jared walking with a woman and a small child. Jared, the typically solitary figure with zero mention of a family in the tabloids, quietly helped load the stroller into the trunk. The inside of the luxury sedan offered a calm oasis from the noisy airport. The tinted windows granted privacy, while soft classical music played in the background. Usually, Jared would be on his phone, sending rapid-fire emails or finalizing business calls, but not this time. This time, he was solely focused on Mia and her son. "Where to, Mr. Bennett?" the driver asked politely. Jared turned to Mia. She provided her sister's address, and the car set off into the city, merging onto highways lined with skyscrapers in the distance. The boy yawned, leaning against Mia's arm, and she stroked his hair. Jard noted every gesture, absorbing the devotion that radiated between mother and child. He cleared his throat softly. "So, how old is he?" Mia's gaze flicked up from the toddler, and she took a measured breath. 3. His birthday was a few weeks ago. 3. Jard felt his chest constrict. That timeline dug into him. 3 years, enough time that he should have known about a child. But what right did he have to feel resentful? They were both at fault somehow, or maybe it was just fate. He nodded, letting the weight of that word, 3, sink in. The boy, perhaps sensing the seriousness in the car, squirmed. Jard caught the child's curious stare and risked a soft, comforting smile. "Hey, buddy. Long day, huh?" The toddler nodded, blinking slowly. Outside, the skyline of Chicago glimmered under the midday sun. Eventually, the sedan stopped at a traffic light. Jard decided to speak softly, so only Mia could hear. "Listen," he said, his voice thick with a kind of tension even he didn't fully understand. "I know we have a lot to talk about. I don't want to pressure you, but I also don't want to lose you again before I understand what happened." He left the words hanging, giving Mia the space to respond. She exhaled shakily, glancing at her son, who was now drifting off to sleep in her lap. "I promise I'll explain," she murmured, her gaze filled with all the feelings she'd been bottling up since they'd parted ways. "I owe you that much. Maybe once we reach my sister's we can set a time to talk properly." Jared nodded. "Deal." A pang of dread knotted Mia's stomach. She imagined the meltdown that might ensue if Jared felt betrayed. And she couldn't deny it. She had, in a way, stolen his chance to be a father from day one. But she also remembered the phone call from a lawyer's office years ago, telling her Jared was set to relocate overseas for a massive expansion, or the paparazzi stories that had once documented his whirlwind romances with socialites and heiresses. At the time, Mia convinced herself that stepping away was the right thing, so as not to derail his unstoppable career. She had believed he was better off not knowing. Yet as she peered sideways at Jared, she saw no sign of the calculating, cutthroat businessman. Instead, he looked concerned, uncertain, maybe even a bit fragile. That unsettled her, because if he was truly sincere in his care, maybe she had been wrong all along. They arrived at a stately brownstone in a leafy neighborhood. Mia's sister, Talia, was waiting on the stoop, arms crossed, eyes scanning for the cab she assumed Mia would emerge from. Instead, she spotted a sleek black sedan pulling up. Jared got out first, turning to help Mia retrieve the stroller. Talia's eyebrows nearly shot off her face when she recognized Jared's tall, broad-shouldered figure. She had seen him on business magazines and fleeting glimpses on the news. She also knew enough from Mia's past to identify him. What is going on?" Talia asked, stepping down quickly to greet them. "It's a long story," Mia replied, hoisting her now sleepy child into her arms. "Jared offered us a ride." Talia opened her mouth to speak again, glancing between the two, then simply nodded, leading them up the few steps into the house. Inside, the living room was cozy and filled with bright cushions and children's toys scattered around. Talia's own little boy was apparently napping upstairs. Jared lingered in the entrance, unsure if he was intruding. Mia laid her son on a small couch, carefully draping a soft blanket over him. For a moment, the house was silent, except for the gentle hum of traffic outside. Talia cleared her throat, a pointed gaze traveling from Mia to Jared. Let me put on some coffee," she said diplomatically, moving toward the kitchen. Alone in the living room, Jared and Mia found themselves standing just feet apart. His gaze fell on the child, peacefully asleep, and his heart clenched with 100 questions. Mia clasped her hands together, the tension evident. "You have so many questions," she said, voice almost trembling. "I want to answer all of them, but maybe not right here." She nodded toward the sleeping boy. "He's been through enough excitement today." Jared took a step forward, and Mia could see the mix of concern, heartbreak, and confusion carved into his features. "I understand," he said, his voice low. "Name a place, name a time, and I'll be there." She inhaled, as if buoying her courage. "There's a small cafe just a couple blocks from here. Why don't we meet there tomorrow morning after I settle in with Talia and the little one is more at ease?" Jared's shoulders eased in relief. "Yes, that sounds good." Then his eyes flicked again to the sleeping child. After a moment's hesitation, he pulled out a business card from his wallet and handed it to Mia. "Here, my personal number, in case you need anything at all." His sincerity was disarming. Mia gently took the card, feeling the weight of the unspoken words between them. "Thank you." Talia re-entered the room, coffee mugs in hand. She offered them with a cordial smile, trying to ease the strain in the atmosphere. Jared set his mug on a side table, taking one polite sip. His gaze never strayed far from Mia or the dozing child. Finally, after a quick exchange of pleasantries, he excused himself, sense of privacy telling him Mia needed time to breathe and gather her thoughts. As Mia walked jarred to the door, neither quite knew what to say. The porch light flickered gently and the setting sun cast long shadows across the quiet street. "Until tomorrow," Jared said softly, stepping down to the sidewalk. He lingered a moment, searching her face. Mia nodded, swallowing the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to spill out. Jared gave a faint half-smile, then climbed into his waiting car. The vehicle glided away, disappearing around the corner, leaving Mia standing on the porch, arms folded against the sudden chill. At her back, Talia's voice broke the silence. "You need to tell him," she said gently but firmly. "He has a right to know." Mia turned slightly, her eyes stinging. She looked through the front window where her son lay sleeping, rosy-cheeked in the glow of the living room lamp. "I know," she murmured. "I'm going to, tomorrow." Still, as the sky darkened, Mia couldn't shake the knot of dread and hope tightening inside her. Tomorrow promised answers and possibly heartbreak, yet for the first time in a long time, part of her felt a flicker of possibility. Perhaps telling the truth wouldn't just shatter everything. Maybe, just maybe, it would set them all free. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains, illuminating the small guest room Mia had settled into for the night. She had barely slept. Her mind refused to relent, cycling over what she would say to Jared, how she would say it, and how he might react once the truth finally landed. Eventually, she gave up on finding rest and got dressed, quietly leaving the room so as not to wake her toddler, who was blissfully still asleep down the hallway. Downstairs, Talia stood over the kitchen island, sipping coffee. She looked up when Mia entered, concern etched into her features. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. Mia shrugged, slipping onto a stool. Honestly, terrified. She thumbed the rim of Talia's mug, half wanting to ask for coffee, half too jittery already to handle caffeine. What if I've waited too long? What if Jared... She couldn't complete the sentence. The possibilities were too vast. Anger, rejection, confusion, or maybe something she couldn't even name. Talia offered her a reassuring squeeze on the arm. "You did what you thought was right at the time. You can't change the past, but you can decide how honest you'll be going forward." Mia let out a long breath. "I know." She swallowed hard, her thoughts drifting to the boy asleep upstairs. His energy had drained so quickly after the flight, but she knew he'd be up soon, bounding around the house with that sweet curiosity of his. She wondered if he had any inkling about the man from yesterday, the man who had somehow soothed him more effectively than Mia had ever seen a stranger do. Talia glanced at the clock. "Did you still plan on meeting Jared at the cafe around 9? "Yeah," Mia confirmed. "He said he'd be there. I just hope I can get all the words out without losing my nerve." She glanced at her phone, seeing no new messages from Jared, and that was oddly comforting. At least he hadn't decided to withdraw his offer to talk. When footsteps pattered on the stairs, Mia turned to see her toddler with sleepy eyes, clinging to a small plush dinosaur. He ambled over, burying his face against her leg. "Good morning, sweet pea," Mia greeted, picking him up. He was warm and smelled faintly of soap and that undefinable sweetness only small children have. "Did you sleep okay?" He nodded sleepily, pressing his cheek to her shoulder. Talia pulled a playful face. "There's pancakes in it for you if you fully wake up." That earned a small grin from the boy. Mia gently set him down and watched as he toddled over to Talia, who lifted him onto a stool. The smell of pancake batter quickly filled the kitchen, but Mia's appetite was non-existent. Her stomach felt like it was twisting in knots with every passing minute. By the time 8:30 rolled around, she decided she couldn't wait any longer. She gave her son a kiss on the forehead, promising she'd be back in a little while, ignoring Talia's pitying but encouraging smile. Outside, the sun was already climbing, warming the sidewalk. Mia had always enjoyed Chicago, its bustle, its neighborhoods rich with character, but this morning, the city's energy seemed to amplify her own jitters. She walked the 2 blocks to the cafe, replaying different versions of how she might start the conversation with Jared. Our son? She kept thinking. It was one phrase, but it carried a weight capable of shifting entire worlds. She recognized Jared through the window the moment she approached the cafe. He was seated at a small table near the back, posture upright as always, a cup of something steaming in front of him. He appeared lost in thought, occasionally checking his watch. That watch, Mia noted with a pang, reminded her of how her son had played with it mere hours ago. Strangely, the memory made her chest tighten. Gathering what fragments of courage she had, she entered the shop, the bell at the door chiming softly. Jared looked up and his eyes latched onto hers instantly. She offered a tight smile, forcing herself toward him. The coffee aroma and low chatter of other patrons provided a thin privacy, enough for them to speak without drawing attention. "Hi," she murmured, slipping into the seat opposite him. She felt the wood of the chair press into her back, grounding her. "Morning," Jared said, gently pushing a second cup of coffee her way. "I wasn't sure if you'd want something, but I took a gamble." She tried a sip, the liquid warming her throat. "Thank you," she said quietly, grateful for the small gesture. For a moment, neither knew how to begin, the swirl of tension so thick it felt almost visible. Jared inhaled slowly. "How's the little guy? I hated to see him so exhausted yesterday." Mia wrapped her fingers around the mug. "He's fine. He actually slept really well." She paused, hesitating. "He's already calling Chicago his new vacation city." For a moment, that spurred a shared smile between them, but just as swiftly, it faded when Mia cleared her throat. "Listen, Jared, I owe you an explanation. There's a lot to cover." His gaze softened, but the muscles in his shoulders visibly tensed. "I'm here, whatever you want to tell me." He leaned forward slightly, bracing his elbows on the small wooden table, ignoring the bustle around them. She took a steadying breath. "When we first met, I was so young. You, on the other hand, were already skyrocketing in your career. And after those weeks we spent together, I don't know if you ever realized just how important they were to me. It felt like you opened this door to a world I didn't even know existed." Jared's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "It was special for me too, Mia. I never wanted it to end the way it did." She blinked, forging on, her voice hushed. "I found out I was pregnant shortly after you left. I tried to find a way to tell you, but then I heard about your overseas move. Every headline said you were expanding to Europe, and I felt out of place, like maybe if I told you, I'd be messing up everything you'd built. You always said how focused you were on the plan, on the future, and I panicked." She pressed a hand to her forehead, breathing shakily. "I chose not to reach out, telling myself that I was protecting you, that I was strong enough to handle it alone. But the truth is, I was also afraid. I loved you in a way that scared me, and I was terrified you'd see me as an obstacle." Jared's jaw tensed as he listened, but he didn't interrupt, letting her speak in a rush of honesty she'd bottled up for years. She continued, voice trembling. "So, I kept quiet. I raised him with no illusions of help. We managed. We made a small life for ourselves, though it wasn't always easy." She swallowed, tears threatening to surface. "He's 3 now, and you're his father." The hum of the cafe pressed in around them, muffled conversation, soft music, the hiss of an espresso machine. But in Mia's mind, everything seemed to quiet as she waited for Jared's reaction. He didn't move for a moment, his gaze fixed on the table as if it held an answer. A heartbeat passed. Another. Then Jared shut his eyes, taking a breath so deep it shuddered in his chest. When he opened them, his stare met hers, reflecting a swirl of emotions. Surprise, hurt, but also a flicker of something that might have been relief. He spoke carefully. "I suspected it yesterday the moment I saw him. I was trying to do the math in my head, trying to see if it made sense. It does. Mia, I wish you hadn't felt you had to do this alone. Her eyes flickered down. I thought I was doing you a favor, in a twisted way. You were on magazine covers, building an empire. I didn't want to throw a wrench into your entire life. I knew you'd feel obligated to— Mia, he said, voice taut with emotion. He reached across the table, resting his hand on hers. It was the slightest contact, but it pulsed with significance. I can't tell you how it feels right now to discover I have a son. Part of me feels robbed. Another part of me is unbelievably grateful I even got this chance. But I can't change the past, can I? She shook her head, tears now slipping down her cheeks. No. His hand tightened around hers. Then maybe we focus on the present, the future. Let me be there for you. For him. He exhaled, pressing his free palm over his eyes for a second, as if trying to steady himself. I have no idea how to be a father, Mia. I've spent my life building my companies, traveling, making deals. I'm scared too. His raw honesty undid her. She gripped his hand and closed her eyes briefly, letting a tear roll down. I know, and we don't have to figure it out all at once. I don't want to keep lying. Not to you, not to him. He deserves to know who you are. Jared rubbed his thumb gently over the back of her hand, a small gesture of comfort. I agree. We'll take it slow. I want to meet him. Properly. His voice caught. I want him to know me, not as some stranger on an airplane, but as his dad. A choked laugh escaped Mia, half relief, half nervous energy. You really mean that? Of course I do. You might not believe it, but I've thought of you often these last few years. I always wondered if there had been more for us. He paused, swallowing. If only I'd known. They fell silent, each grappling with 1,000 overlapping emotions. Mia pulled her hand back gently, wiping her tears with the back of her wrist. She breathed unsteadily. Thank you. I really was prepared for you to be furious. Jared tilted his head. I won't deny it's overwhelming. But the anger, if I even feel that, is overshadowed by the fact that I have a child, a son. That's bigger than any business deal or wealth or anything else. Overcome by the tenderness in his voice, Mia took another sip of her coffee to steady herself. The warmth spread through her chest, and for the first time, she felt like maybe she had done one thing right by giving Jared the truth, even if belatedly. They spent the next half hour discussing the details of the child's life, his name, his favorite stories, the silly little words he still mispronounced. Jared soaked it all in, asking question after question. Does he like to paint, like you used to? Is he in preschool yet? What's his favorite snack? Mia answered piece by piece, watching how Jared's expression flickered with awe and regret as he realized how many milestones he'd missed. Yet in the same breath, she saw hope shining in his eyes, a determination to be part of it, going forward. Outside, passers-by bustled along the sidewalk, glancing in now and then, never suspecting the magnitude of the conversation unfolding inside. Eventually, the cafe grew busier, patrons streaming in, taking seats around them. Jared glanced around, becoming aware of how personal their talk was. He cleared his throat, voice now subdued. Would you mind if I stop by your sister's place later today? Maybe we can introduce me to him. Or reintroduce me, I guess. Mia's smile was uncertain but sincere. Yes. Let me just talk to him. He remembers you from the flight, so it won't be completely new. She hesitated, then added, Thank you for not turning this into a battle. I was so certain it would be. He hesitated, looking at her with equal parts sadness and gratitude. I want what's best for both of you. If that means we tread carefully, or you need me to prove something, I will. I can't pretend I'm not upset to have missed out on those first years. But I'm not going to let pride or resentment overshadow this new chance. Mia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I appreciate that, she whispered. They stood to leave, the scrape of chairs on the worn floor. Jared laid a few bills on the table, ignoring Mia's half-hearted protest that she could pay for her own coffee. As they stepped outside, the crisp morning air greeted them. For a moment, they just stood on the sidewalk, uncertain of how to part ways now that everything had changed. Jared's driver was parked a few feet away, and Mia recognized him from the day before, waiting attentively. She realized Jared must have asked him to come in case she needed a ride back, or perhaps Jared intended to go straight to his next business engagement. He was, after all, a man with a towering schedule. "You can ride with me?" Jared offered, noticing her hesitation. "Or if you need time, I can call you later." Mia drew in a breath, remembering Talia was expecting her home. "I'll just walk," she said with a gentle smile. "It's only a few blocks. I need some fresh air anyway." He nodded, stepping closer. The sunlight kissed his features, highlighting that confident, yet now somehow vulnerable demeanor. "I'll text you when I'm on my way over." "That would be good." He lingered, looking like he might reach out and brush her cheek or fold her into a hug, but he stopped himself, aware that so much remained undefined. Instead, he offered a subtle nod and stepped back toward his waiting car. "Until later, Mia." She watched him go, her breath catching. A swirl of conflicting emotions crowded in her chest. Relief, fear, and a cautious bloom of hope all tangled together. As Jared's car pulled away, Mia turned and began walking in the direction of Talia's house. With each step, she felt the magnitude of what had just happened. At long last, she'd opened a door that should have never been closed to begin with. She clutched her phone in hand, half expecting a surge of second thoughts or regrets. But none came. Instead, an image of Jared's earnest expression hovered in her mind, replaying the moment he'd said, "I have a child." His voice had been tinged with wonder and heartache both. It was impossible to rewrite history, but maybe they could discover a new kind of future, one that included them both loving the same remarkable boy. And for the first time in a long time, Mia felt like she wasn't standing alone on that road ahead. Mia made it back to Talia's brownstone, feeling a curious mixture of nervous energy and relief. Each step from the cafe had felt lighter than the last, as though the truth she'd carried for so long had finally been set down and allowed to breathe. But the closer she got to the house, the more a trembling sort of anticipation built in her chest. Jared was coming today, and she was about to introduce him to their son for the first time as Daddy. When she walked through the front door, she found Talia in the living room, balancing her own toddler on one hip, while Mia's little boy stacked bright plastic blocks on the floor. The children had apparently become fast friends, giggling over some private nonsense. Mia's son looked up as she entered, grinning wide. "Mommy," he chirped, "we're building towers." "Wow, that's a pretty tall tower," Mia said, squatting next to him. She ruffled his hair gently. Her stomach flipped, picturing how different it would be to have Jared sitting here, praising this same tower. "Mind if I join in?" she asked, determined to let go of her anxieties for a moment. They passed a few minutes in easy play, a minor reprieve from the more serious events overshadowing the day. Talia observed from a short distance, occasionally sidestepping to rescue blocks from tumbling toddlers. She threw Mia the occasional questioning glance, an "Are you okay?" silent check-in. Each time Mia offered a small nod or a smile in return, letting Talia know she was holding steady. Eventually, Talia's own son demanded a snack, and she whisked him away to the kitchen. Mia's little boy, left alone with her, peered up and asked, "Are we going outside again, Mommy? I like walking around here." It was a simple question, yet Mia's breath caught. She wanted to keep life normal for him, but soon everything would change. In a few hours, Jared would appear at the door. How did she prepare her child for that? She decided honesty was best, at least in gentle terms. "We will go outside, sweet pea, but first, remember the nice man from the airplane?" She used the tone that parents often do when introducing new concepts, gentle but deliberate. Her son nodded, brow furrowed in that earnest little kid way. "He gave me a shiny pen," he recalled, eyes brightening, "and he helped me not be scared." Mia's heart throbbed at the memory. Yes, that man. Well, he's coming by today to see us. He wants to talk and maybe play with you a bit. Her voice grew soft as she sought the right words. He's a very special friend. The child blinked, clearly registering the news with no immediate concern. "Okay," he said, returning his attention to the wobbly tower of blocks. Little ones often took the world in stride, having no concept of the underlying tensions that adults lived with. Mia felt both relief and dread swirl in her chest. She knew this was only the very beginning. Once her son began to grasp that Jared was more than a friendly stranger, there would be more conversations. Questions about why Jared hadn't been around, about what a dad truly meant. But for now, she'd hold tight to the simple acceptance her child displayed. The afternoon slipped by in small tasks. Talia took her own toddler to a friend's nearby, leaving Mia with a quieter house. Mia tidied up automatically, wiping the kitchen counters, straightening throw pillows in the living room. She changed her son into a clean t-shirt and comfy shorts. He fussed a bit, wanting to keep on the dinosaur pajamas he'd insisted on wearing most of the day, but Mia sweet-talked him into a compromise with the promise of reading a favorite picture book before nap time. By mid-afternoon, the boy dozed off again, cozily tucked into Talia's guest room. Mia hovered in the doorway, gazing at his small figure. Her heart clenched at how peaceful he looked. Then, with a slow breath, she descended to the living room and settled onto the couch, phone in hand, waiting for Jared's message. It didn't come until nearly 4. The phone buzzed and Mia's pulse quickened. She swiped to read the text. Jarred. "I'm finishing up a meeting, but I can be at Talia's in about 30 minutes. Does that still work?" Mia typed back quickly. Mia. "Yes, that's fine. My son is resting, but he should be up soon. We'll be here." 30 minutes. That was enough time for Mia to glance in the mirror, realize she looked a bit frazzled, and rushed to freshen up. She combed out her hair, opting for a simple ponytail, and dabbed a light coat of concealer under her eyes, hoping to mask any trace of the sleepless night. As she did, she caught her own reflection. For the first time, she noticed how tense her shoulders were, how taut her jaw. Breathe, she told herself. It would all be okay. Sure enough, less than half an hour later, Mia spotted a sleek black sedan pull up outside. She watched from behind the gauzy curtains as Jared stepped onto the curb, scanning the front of the brownstone before meeting her gaze through the window. He wore a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, as though he'd just come straight from the office. Yet the moment he locked eyes with her, a different expression took over. One of hesitant excitement, maybe even vulnerability. She opened the front door. A wave of warm summer air greeted her, carrying the sounds of distant traffic and children playing somewhere down the block. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," Jared echoed, stepping onto the porch. He cast a quick glance around as if to orient himself in this domestic world so different from his high-rise boardrooms. Then, with a slight smile, he held out a small paper bag. "I brought cookies. For him. I wasn't sure what else to bring." Mia's lips twitched at his anxious generosity. "He'll love it. Thank you." He followed her inside, shutting the door gently behind him. The hallway led them into the living room, where bright patches of afternoon sun lay across the floor. Mia offered him a seat on the couch, and he perched there, scanning the space with subdued curiosity. "It's nice," he remarked. "Talia has good taste," Mia replied. "She and her husband did a lot to make it feel welcoming. I've been staying here while I figure some things out. I was planning to move, actually, but now—" She let the sentence fade, not wanting to burden him with details of her unsettled life yet. Jared nodded, and for a few moments they spoke in hushed voices about the basics of how she'd ended up in Chicago. She explained she'd been offered a short-term consulting gig, something she could do remotely, so she decided to accept Talia's invitation to stay and regroup. Jared listened intently, occasionally offering a supportive nod. Then footsteps sounded on the stairs. Mia's son appeared at the edge of the living room, rubbing his eyes, blinking in the mild confusion of just waking up. He paused when he noticed Jared sitting there, someone he recognized yet didn't fully understand. Jared stood slowly, trying not to startle him. "Hi," he said gently, voice softer than Mia had ever heard. "Remember me from the airplane?" The child's brow furrowed in concentration for a beat, then his face lit with recognition. "You have the shiny pen!" he announced, a note of excitement in his voice. He scampered forward, eyes scanning Jared's pockets as though expecting a pen might emerge at any moment. Jared couldn't help but smile. "That's right, I do. I have another surprise for you," he said, glancing toward Mia. She nodded her permission. Carefully, Jared reached into the paper bag and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped chocolate chip cookie. "I thought you might like this." The toddler's eyes went round. "Cookie?" he whispered, as if it were the greatest treasure. He shot Mia a hopeful glance, waiting for an okay. She chuckled. "You can have it, but just half for now, so you don't spoil your dinner." She divided it, handing her son one piece and letting him nibble with blissful contentment. While the boy munched, Jared lowered himself to a crouch so he was eye level. Mia noticed the slight tremor in Jared's hands, the raw nerves dancing behind his calm facade. This was, after all, the first time he was truly interacting with his own child, now that he understood exactly what that meant. Mia's son, for his part, seemed at ease, happily devouring the cookie. "What's your name, little buddy?" Jared asked softly. Though he already knew from Mia's earlier confessions, he wanted to hear it from the boy himself. The toddler gave his name, voice muffled by cookie crumbs. Jared repeated it, letting the syllables roll gently off his tongue as though committing it to memory. "That's a strong name," Jared said. "You know, I'm a friend of your mom's. I used to know her a long time ago." The child blinked, then shrugged, apparently more intrigued by the cookie than by complicated adult relationships. "I like your pen," he said, mouth still half full. Jared laughed softly. "I'll bring it next time, I promise." Mia, watching this exchange, felt her throat tighten. She could see the potential closeness there, the way her son gravitated easily toward Jared's kindness. Yet she also understood that this was just one gentle meeting, a foundation they'd all need to build upon. They spent the next few minutes simply existing together. Jared asked the boy about his favorite games, what he liked to do on weekends, and whether he liked Chicago so far. The toddler answered in typical 3-year-old fashion, short, sometimes nonsensical bursts, but always earnest. When the conversation drifted, the boy wandered over to his stack of blocks, beckoning Jared to join him. Mia watched as Jared carefully folded himself onto the rug, letting the child show him how to line up the blocks. There was something almost surreal about seeing the powerful CEO figure hunched on the floor, dutifully following a preschooler's instructions about color coordination and structural design. At one point, the boy exclaimed, "Look, it's a house!" He placed a small toy car beside it and pretended it was a family's home, complete with a squeaky door and invisible friends living inside. Jared played along, nodding with fascination. Mia hovered nearby, a silent observer, occasionally offering a comment or quietly stepping in to avoid a block tower from tumbling too soon. Every so often, Jared shot Mia a look filled with a mixture of gratitude and wonder, as if he still couldn't believe this was real. Mia's chest felt tight with emotion, seeing him approach the role of fatherhood with more willingness than she ever dared hope. After a while, Jared glanced at the time on his phone and sighed reluctantly. "I have a conference call in about an hour," he admitted. "I'm sorry, I didn't plan well enough to clear the entire evening." Mia stood and nodded, understanding. "You've done a lot just by coming. Really. Thank you." He rose from the floor, giving the toddler a gentle pat on the head. I'll come back soon, okay? He told the boy, who stared up with wide, accepting eyes. Maybe next time I'll bring that pen and we can draw together. It wasn't lost on Mia how Jared quietly avoided the word dad, not wanting to complicate things before they had fully navigated how to explain it. She appreciated the care he showed. As they walked Jared to the door, Mia's son trailed behind, hugging one of his stuffed animals. At the threshold, Jared lingered, giving Mia a questioning glance, as if to confirm whether they were okay. She nodded, stepping just outside with him so the boy wouldn't overhear. "How did that feel?" she asked softly, searching his face. Jared let out a slight laugh, tinged with disbelief. "Like having my entire world tilt on its axis," he confessed. "In a good way. Overwhelming, but good." Mia nodded, relieved. "He took to you quickly," she observed. "He's usually a bit shy with new people." Jared's eyes glowed with a subdued happiness. "That means a lot." He hesitated, then ventured gently, "Maybe next time we can talk about how to tell him who I am. I don't want to upset him or rush him, but I'd like him to know." She took a breath. "We'll work up to it." A pause, then she reached out to give his arm a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for today." He covered her hand with his. "Thank you for letting me in," he said quietly. "Let's try to figure this out together." They drew apart as the toddler called from inside, wanting help with his blocks. Mia waved at Jared, who gave one final glance at the living room before stepping off the porch. She shut the door, heart twisting in a mix of tenderness and relief. Inside, her little boy was searching around, confusion on his face. "Where'd he go?" he asked, eyes darting to the doorway. Mia forced a calm smile. "He had to leave for a bit, love, but he'll come back soon." She ruffled his hair, leaning down to kiss the top of his head. "You liked playing with him, huh?" The child nodded vigorously, returning to his blocks with childish acceptance of the comings and goings of grown-ups. Mia sank onto the couch, letting her pulse settle, aware that from here on out, life would never be the same. And, she realized with a trembling sense of hope, maybe that was exactly what she needed. By evening, Mia felt the weight of the day pressing down on her, a bitter-sweet heaviness. Her child had gone to sleep chattering about the pen man, which made Mia's chest tighten with emotion. She found herself replaying every detail of Jared's visit, the quiet awe in his voice, his gentle approach with their son, even the uncertain way he'd hovered in the doorway as if reluctant to leave. Each memory both soothed and overwhelmed her. To clear her mind, she stepped onto Talia's small back patio once the house was quiet. The sky above Chicago was a tapestry of navy blue, just a faint glow from the city lights in the distance. She sipped a mug of herbal tea, trying to calm her nerves. Thoughts swarmed in her head. Should she have told Jared more about the boy's earliest days, the first words and steps he'd missed? Or was it better to let Jared figure out fatherhood one small moment at a time? A gentle creak alerted her that she wasn't alone. Talia nudged open the sliding door, stepping onto the patio with her own mug in hand. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, voice hushed. Mia offered a faint smile and shook her head. "Too many thoughts." Talia settled beside her on a small bench, exhaling gently. "It's a lot to take in, suddenly letting Jared into your life again. And not just yours, but your son's." Mia nodded, staring off at the neat row of potted plants along the fence. "I expected him to be furious or suspicious, but he's open, almost eager. Which is good, right?" Talia pressed, tilting her head sympathetically. "It is. It still scares me." Mia let out a shaky breath. "He says he wants to be part of our lives. I believe him. But how do I manage that? Do I move back to his city if he wants more frequent contact, uproot our routines? How do I protect my boy from disappointment if Jared's work demands become too big?" Talia reached over, resting a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. I think the only thing to do is talk openly. Be honest about your worries, just like you were about everything else. If Jared wants to be in his son's life, he has to make choices. And you can set boundaries or ask for certain commitments. Mia nodded slowly, sipping her tea. Boundaries, she echoed. Yeah, you're right. She cast a grateful glance at her sister. Thank you for letting us stay here. I know it's a full house. Don't be silly, Talia said with a small laugh. We're family. Besides, my kid loves the company. He's been babbling about having a cousin to share blocks with. Mia's heart softened. That reminder of the children's bond brought an unexpected calm. Perhaps it wouldn't be so bad if she decided to stay in Chicago a while longer, let her son build relationships, and allow Jared to drop by. I haven't told him yet, she murmured, that Jared is his dad. I want to find the right way, the right time. Her gaze grew distant. But Jared and I did agree we'll do it soon. Talia nodded, sipping her own drink. Take it one step at a time. Your son's happy and healthy. Jared seems genuine. Let yourself be hopeful, Mia. Hopeful. It was a word Mia had once feared. But maybe it was finally time to embrace it. Over the next week, Jared proved his sincerity by texting or calling almost daily, brief but friendly updates, checking on the boy, and asking how Mia was doing. He wasn't pushy, but Mia could sense the eagerness behind each message. He was grappling with a brand new role, unsure of the protocols but willing to learn. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Jared invited them both to a kid-friendly museum he'd heard about. Mia hesitated at first, uncertain about how a public outing might go. She worried about paparazzi, about her child getting overwhelmed, about Jared's schedule, but Jared insisted on handling it, hiring a modest security detail to keep them from prying eyes. He didn't want to cause a spectacle. He just wanted to enjoy a few hours of being with his son. When Mia told her toddler they'd be going to a museum with the nice pen man, he burst into excited cheers. Talia teased Mia, saying the boy was halfway in love with Jared already. Mia blushed but couldn't hide her own growing excitement. So on that gray, drizzly afternoon, Mia fastened her son into a car seat in Jared's vehicle. She'd offered to drive separately, but Jared insisted they go together to make it easier on the child. The boy clutched a small plush dinosaur and stared wide-eyed at Jared in the driver's seat. "Where's the pen?" he asked without preamble. Jared chuckled, reaching into a suit jacket draped over the passenger seat and producing the pen with a flourish. "Here it is, buddy. It's all yours for the day." He handed it over, and the toddler treated it like a prized possession, twisting it open and closed as though it were magic. Mia settled into the front seat, trying not to let her nerves show. She glanced over at Jared, who was checking the GPS on his phone for the best route to the museum. She found herself struck by how natural he looked in that moment, part corporate executive, part newly devoted father. A surprising warmth filled her chest. The drive took about 40 minutes, and along the way the toddler peppered them with questions about the rain, the cars on the highway, whether dinosaurs like to ride in cars too. Jared fielded each query with surprising patience and creativity, eliciting tiny giggles from the back seat. Mia listened, heart brimming. Once they arrived at the Children's Museum, Jared led the way inside, staying close to the boy's side. At first, Mia hung back slightly, allowing Jared to navigate these fatherly waters. He helped the toddler remove his raincoat, held the door open, and pointed out colorful signs depicting different exhibit sections. The child's eyes lit up at the sight of interactive displays, giant puzzle walls, and bright murals. Together, they ventured into a dinosaur-themed area, an obvious choice given the boy's current obsession with prehistoric creatures. Jared squatted next to him, marveling at plastic fossils and flipping through an oversized dinosaur picture book the museum had on display. Mia found herself snapping a few discreet photos on her phone, unable to resist capturing this moment, her son leaning against Jared's shoulder, pointing to a T-Rex illustration, both of them enthralled. The hours slipped by in a blur of play and discovery. They built foam block towers, tested a mini science exhibit that let them create small soap bubble volcanoes, and even tried a music corner full of xylophones and little drum sets. At every turn, Jared was right there, encouraging, attentive, occasionally glancing at Mia with a smile that said, "Can you believe this?" Mia could barely believe it. She'd envisioned so many worst-case scenarios for how Jared might handle fatherhood. But here he was, making silly dinosaur roars to amuse a 3-year-old, looking for all the world like a man fully present in the moment. Eventually, they settled onto a bench in the museum's small cafe area for a snack break. The toddler munched on fruit slices and a small carton of milk. Jared leaned closer to Mia, lowering his voice as their child was absorbed in meticulously counting grapes. "I can't thank you enough for this," Jared murmured. "Honestly, I'm having the best time I've had in maybe ever. I didn't know life could feel like this." Mia's cheeks warmed. "He adores you," she said softly. "You're so patient with him. You really don't have to thank me." Jared's expression shifted slightly, more serious now. "I do, though, because I've seen a glimpse of what I missed. And as wonderful as this is, I can't help but think, I wasn't there for his birth or his first steps or—" She reached out, placing her hand on his arm. "Let's not dwell on the past. You're here now. That's what counts." He exhaled, a slow smile returning. The toddler looked up at them, noticing their closeness, and cocked his head. "Mommy, can you peel this orange?" Mia obliged, chuckling, and Jared playfully attempted to grab a segment of the orange for himself, prompting their child to giggle and pull it away, exclaiming, "No, that's mine!" Mia's heart fluttered at the familial ease of it all. As they finished snacks, Jared glanced around to make sure no onlookers were paying unusual attention. A few parents recognized Jared. He was a well-known CEO after all. But no one dared interrupt this domestic scene. His discreet security detail hovered at the periphery, ensuring no paparazzi or curious strangers disrupted them. When the toddler grew sleepy from the excitement of the day, they decided to head out. Jared carried him part of the way to the car, letting Mia's arms rest. The boy was small and light against Jared's chest. Mia watched them from a step behind, a lump in her throat at how naturally Jared cradled him. In another life, this might have been a normal father-son outing all along. The car ride back was quieter. The little one dozed off, his cheek smushed against his seatbelt, occasionally muttering about dinosaurs in his sleep. Mia and Jared exchanged a few hushed observations, mostly about the child's reactions to the exhibits. She noticed Jared's knuckles tighten on the steering wheel now and then, as if emotion was coursing through him in waves. When he parked in front of Talia's house, they sat in companionable silence for a moment. Mia touched Jared's shoulder gently. "He's asleep. We might have to carefully carry him in." Jared nodded, turning off the engine. "Let me," he said, voice husky. He got out and circled around to the back seat, unfastening the child's seatbelt with careful hands. The boy roused slightly but settled again as Jared lifted him, head rolling to rest against Jared's broad shoulder. Mia grabbed her bag, stepping onto the curb. The evening air had a fresh post-rain smell, the pavement still glistening. She led Jared inside quietly, gesturing for him to place the boy on the living room couch for now. Once the child was laid down, Jared lingered, gently brushing an errant curl from the boy's forehead. Mia recognized that tender expression. It was pure awe. Reluctantly, Jared straightened. "I should probably go," he whispered, glancing at the dozing child. "But can I come by again soon?" Mia nodded, her own voice soft with emotion. "Of course, he'll be thrilled." They moved to the foyer, footsteps hushed. Jared paused at the door, hesitating. "Mia," he began, a question in his eyes, "can we talk more about, telling him I'm his dad?" She took a steadying breath. "Yes, we should. He's getting used to you quickly." Maybe it'll be easier to explain than we think. But I'll follow your lead, or we can do it together." He exhaled softly. "Let's do it together. I don't want to confuse him. He needs both of us explaining it." Mia's heart clenched. "Okay." She lowered her gaze, a wave of relief washing over her. For so long she'd carried the responsibility alone. Now, in that simple statement, Jared offered to shoulder it with her. He dipped his head in a subdued nod, then slipped out the door. The soft click of it closing left Mia standing in the hush of the entryway, her mind spinning. She peeked into the living room at her sleeping son, so small, so full of trust. A tear escaped the corner of her eye, but it wasn't purely sadness. It was an odd, fragile hope, because for the first time, together had become real. And maybe that was the first step toward a brand new kind of family she never dared to imagine before. The following morning found Mia gathering her nerves for a conversation she'd been dreading and anticipating all at once. Today, she and Jared had agreed to speak to their son, together, and gently explain who Jared really was. Mia woke up feeling jittery, as though she'd consumed several cups of coffee despite having barely touched her breakfast. The house smelled faintly of toast and sweet jam, but she found it difficult to eat. Talia was in the kitchen feeding her own toddler cereal. She looked up, reading Mia's tension in a single glance. "You sure you don't want me to take the boys out for a bit?" Talia offered, half joking. "You look like you might pass out." Mia mustered a shaky laugh. "Thanks for the concern, but no. Jared and I agreed we should do this in a calm environment. No big drama, no big build-up, just an honest talk, something simple." Talia gave her a reassuring nod. "You'll find the words. He's 3 years old, Mia. Kids can be surprisingly wise about these things. He adores Jared already." Mia exhaled slowly. "I know. I just hope it doesn't confuse him too much." Before Talia could respond, little footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mia's boy came bounding in, wearing mismatched socks and carrying a small stuffed dinosaur that had seen better days. He rubbed his eyes, still waking up. "Mommy, is the pen man coming today?" Mia's heart throbbed at how quickly her son had grown attached to Jared. She ruffled his hair. "Yes, he's coming in a little while." "Yay!" the child replied, bouncing on his toes. "We can show him the new tower we built?" Mia forced a bright smile. "Absolutely." Talia hid a grin behind her coffee mug and Mia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she said nothing more. She kept glancing at the clock, counting down the minutes until Jared's arrival. When Jared finally pulled up outside the brownstone, Mia peered out the window and spotted him stepping onto the sidewalk. He wore casual clothes this time, dark jeans and a simple collared shirt, looking slightly less corporate and more approachable. She ushered her son to the living room, then opened the door for Jared to enter. His eyes swept the space, resting on Mia first, then flicking to the child. A gentle smile tugged at his lips. "Good morning," he said, voice low and warm. "Hi," the toddler chirped enthusiastically. He held up the battered plush dinosaur. "Look, I have a T-Rex." Jared crouched to examine the toy. "A T-Rex? The strongest dinosaur, right?" The boy nodded, thrusting the plush forward for emphasis. Mia stood back a moment, letting them greet each other, but the flutter in her chest wouldn't subside. She was acutely aware that they had more to do than chat about dinosaurs. Her gaze caught Jared's, and he subtly nodded, confirming that yes, they needed to have that talk. She cleared her throat gently. "Hey, sweet pea," she said, addressing her son while he clutched the T-Rex. "There's something we want to share with you. Do you want to come sit on the couch with us?" He blinked, then scampered over to his favorite spot, patting the cushion. Jared moved to sit on one side, and Mia settled on the other, sandwiching the boy between them. He giggled, delighted by the attention from both adults. Mia felt her palms grow clammy. She shot Jared a small, nervous glance. He gave an almost imperceptible nod, encouraging her to start. Mia placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Remember, we've talked sometimes about how some kids have a mommy and a daddy, and some have just a mommy or just a daddy, or grandparents who take care of them? She spoke slowly, measuring each word to suit his level of understanding. Well, you've just had me for a while, but there's someone else who really loves you, too. He stared up at her, curiosity lighting his eyes. Who? Mia's heart pounded. She could hear Jared inhale softly. Do you remember how we said the pen man is very special? The toddler nodded, turning to Jared. You? Jared's voice sounded huskier than normal. Yeah, buddy, it's me. He paused, struggling for composure. You know, I love spending time with you, and the reason is, I'm your dad. Mia braced herself for her son's response. She imagined confusion, maybe tears, perhaps more questions than they were prepared to handle. But the child blinked, his plush dinosaur bobbing in his hand. My dad? Yes. Mia laid her hand atop her child's smaller one. Jared is your daddy. He hasn't been here before because he didn't know, but now he knows, and he really wants to be in your life. The toddler absorbed this. Daddy, he repeated quietly, trying out the sound of the word. He turned to Jared and gave him a long, searching look, as if some piece was clicking into place. So that's why you're so nice? He asked, in typical child logic. Jared let out a trembling laugh. I'm nice because I care about you, and I'm so happy I finally get to tell you I'm your dad. The boy's brow furrowed, but not in distress, rather in deep thought. Mia recognized that expression. He was piecing together experiences, from the airplane to the museum visits. Finally, he gave a slight nod and scooted closer to Jared. Are you staying? He asked, in a small, hopeful voice. Jared's throat bobbed. Well, I can't stay every day because I have work, but I promise I'll come see you a lot. And we can call or video chat too. Is that okay? For a moment, Mia feared their son might burst into tears, but instead he pressed his face into Jared's side in a shy hug. The T-Rex squished between them. Okay, he whispered. Mia's eyes stung as she blinked back tears, watching Jared gently return the embrace, cradling their son's small head. There was a hush in the living room, broken only by the faint hum of traffic outside. After a few seconds, the child pulled back, a million curiosities flooding his gaze. Do you like dinosaurs too? He asked, as if fatherhood hinged on that crucial detail. Jared, eyes still bright with emotion, smiled. I do. Maybe not as much as you, but I'd love to learn more. Okay. Satisfied, the boy hopped off the couch, hauling his plush T-Rex with him. Want to see my pictures? He darted to a basket of scribbled drawings near the coffee table, rummaging for his favorites. Jared exhaled shakily, looking at Mia with a mixture of wonder and relief. She nodded, her own tears threatening to spill. In those few unspoken seconds, they both understood this was the best they could have hoped for. The child had accepted the news with an open heart, unburdened by adult fears or resentments. And while they knew deeper questions might arise as he grew, this was a gentle first step. Jared moved to the floor by the coffee table, letting their son excitedly show him several crayon masterpieces, mostly stick figures, dinosaurs, and messy attempts at writing his own name. Mia watched them, her heart so full it almost hurt. She wanted to press pause and store this moment forever. The first time her son called Jared Daddy, without hesitation. Eventually, the conversation turned more playful again, the boys' bright giggles echoing as Jared made silly voices for each dinosaur drawing. Mia quietly slipped out to give them time alone, heading into the kitchen to compose herself. She splashed cool water on her face, still reeling from how seamlessly the introduction had gone. Talia, who had popped out earlier, returned home right then, stepping into the kitchen with a bag of groceries. She took one look at Mia's damp cheeks and alarmed expression, and froze. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Mia let out a watery laugh. Yes, I'm okay, it's just... We told him, Jared told him, and it went really well. I'm just Relieved, I guess. Talia set the groceries down and gave Mia a tight hug. I'm so glad, sis. She peeked into the living room where Jared was helping the toddler line up an entire parade of toy cars. They look like they're already a team. Mia nodded, wiping her tears. I never imagined it would feel this natural. Talia squeezed her arm. Go on, get in there and enjoy your little family moment. A flush of warmth coursed through Mia at the phrase, little family. She hesitated, then stepped back into the living room, where Jared glanced up, smiling as she approached. Their son patted the space next to him, beckoning her to join their circle of toy cars. She sank down onto the floor, wrapping an arm around her son, who happily leaned against her. In that quiet pocket of time, they just played. Jared, Mia, and the boy, forming shapes with blocks, swapping silly jokes, inventing wild stories for the dinosaur plush. Occasionally, Mia and Jared's gazes would meet, both reflecting the magnitude of this new reality, both silently acknowledging that they had a long road ahead. But for now, they relished the simple closeness that had been missing for far too long. When lunchtime rolled around, Talia put together sandwiches, and they all sat around the dining table. It was a casual, impromptu family meal that Mia couldn't have envisioned even a month ago. Jared mostly listened, taking in the child's unfiltered chatter, occasionally meeting Mia's eyes with a tenderness that made her heart skip. After lunch, Jared regretfully checked his phone, apologizing that he had to step away for a work call. He crouched to say goodbye to the boy, promising to come back soon. The child nodded, contentedly clutching his T-Rex, and gave Jared another quick hug. Mia walked him to the door, the hush of the entryway thick with unspoken emotion. Thank you, she whispered, for handling all of this with so much care. Jared cupped her elbow lightly. Thank you for trusting me. I know we can't fix lost time, but maybe we can make up for some of it. He paused, swallowing. I'll text you about getting together again, and if you need anything, please call, day or night. Mia nodded, touched by the sincerity in his voice. I will, she promised. He hesitated a moment longer, eyes flicking toward the living room where their son's giggles echoed as Talia showed him a new game. I've spent my life chasing achievements, he murmured, but I've never felt as fulfilled as I do right now. The confession tugged at Mia's heart. Then let's keep building on it, she said softly. With a last grateful smile, Jared slipped out the door, leaving Mia to stand in the hush of the hallway, her mind buzzing with the day's events. She felt a surge of hope, that tenuous, fragile hope that comes from stepping onto a new path. Yes, there would be challenges, bridging their vastly different lives, figuring out schedules, dealing with the inevitable questions from a child who would one day ask why it took so long for Daddy to show up. But as she returned to the living room and saw her son happily recounting to Talia how Daddy likes dinosaurs too, she knew that the bond they'd just started to form was powerful enough to guide them through. They had embarked on a journey that was long overdue, and neither Mia nor Jared intended to turn back. Over the next few weeks, the days seemed to unfold in a delicate balancing act. Mia juggled caring for her son and helping Talia around the house while also picking up small freelance jobs to earn some income. Meanwhile, Jared floated in and out of their lives, arriving at sporadic intervals, sometimes in a flurry of text messages asking if he could drop by, other times after days of silence when work demanded his full attention. It was an unspoken dance of schedules and obligations, both parental and professional. He visited enough that Talia jokingly left a spare coffee mug on the kitchen counter just for him. Some days, he'd come bearing takeout so no one had to cook, or he'd bring a new children's book he thought might intrigue the toddler. Slowly but steadily, he and the boy built a camaraderie that shifted away from pen man and fully embraced Daddy. One Saturday morning, Jared texted Mia about taking their son to a new indoor play area that had recently opened on the north side of the city. Mia agreed, thinking it would be another easygoing outing. She decided to tag along, if only to watch her son scramble around the foam pits and climbing frames with unbridled glee. Yet the moment they stepped into that bright, neon-lit play zone, Mia felt a pang of self-consciousness. A handful of other parents there recognized Jared. His face had been in business magazines, on social media, and occasionally in news snippets about corporate expansions. He was, after all, the CEO of a major enterprise. Whispers began to swirl. Is that Jared Bennett? Who's the woman with him? And the kid? Mia noticed the curious or speculative glances, each one making her stomach tighten. She'd always avoided the public eye. Her life with her son was usually under the radar, but now she realized that if Jared truly wanted to be present, the spotlight would inevitably turn their way. Jared seemed aware of the stares, too, but he tried to brush them off with practiced composure. He crouched beside the toddler, helping him into a little foam ball pit, encouraging him to throw the bright spheres around. Mia stood by, offering a supportive smile, while mentally bracing herself against the onlookers. One woman even approached, phone in hand, with the telltale expression of someone wanting a selfie or an autograph. Jared politely, but firmly, declined. "Sorry, I'm here with my family," he said in a calm, respectful tone. Mia's cheeks heated at the word family, her heart flipping at how naturally he said it, even if it caused the curious woman to dart a pointed look in Mia's direction. The woman apologized sheepishly and hurried away. Mia turned to Jared once they had a moment of privacy. "Does this happen a lot?" she asked, her voice low. He grimaced slightly. "Unfortunately, yes. I tend to keep a low profile, but people do recognize me sometimes, especially in a public space. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable." She let out a breath, her gaze flicking to their son, who was oblivious to the fuss as he gleefully tossed foam balls at a wall. "I'm okay. I just didn't realize how quickly gossip might start. Rumors, pictures." She paused, biting her lip. "I want to protect him. I don't want him to grow up feeling hounded." Jared's expression softened. "Neither do I. We can take measures, private outings, a bit of security, and as he grows older, I'll respect whatever boundaries we need. You come first, Mia." That earnest note in his voice soothed her more than she expected. She nodded, deciding not to let the gawking ruin their day. "Thank you." Together, they returned their focus to the child, who was now enthusiastically urging Jared to jump into the foam pit with him. Jared tossed off his shoes, rolled up his sleeves, and obliged, earning squeals of laughter from all around. Mia found herself snapping a few covert photos on her phone, Jared flailing in a pool of foam cubes, their toddler climbing over him, both laughing uproariously. Despite the prying eyes, she felt a surge of warmth at how genuine they looked together, how much love there was in those silly moments. Eventually, tired and covered in bits of foam, they made their exit. The sky outside had turned gray, hinting at a coming storm. As they were buckling the boy into Jared's car, the first raindrops began to fall. Jared glanced at Mia, who sat in the back seat alongside their son, maybe to keep him calmer, maybe just to feel closer. Jared offered a small smile in the rearview mirror as he started the engine. "Mind if we grab lunch?" he asked. "There's a diner I know. Quiet, family-owned, no fancy paparazzi traps." Mia agreed, though concern fluttered in her stomach. "Only if you're sure it won't be an issue." "I'm sure," he said confidently, pulling into traffic. "We'll be fine." Indeed, the diner turned out to be a cozy, welcoming spot. The only attention they drew was from the kindly waitress who fussed over their child, offering crayons and a paper placemat to color on. They settled into a corner booth. Mia's son immediately started scribbling drawings of dinosaurs, trucks, and random squiggles that only he understood. Jared leaned in to watch, occasionally labeling each doodle, "Is that a pterodactyl? That's awesome!" Mia couldn't help but notice Jared's phone buzzing non-stop, vibrating on the tabletop. He'd glance at the screen each time, the tension in his eyes flickering. Once or twice he answered a text or two before silencing it and refocusing on their son. The third or fourth time it rang, Mia gently reached over and squeezed his hand. "Go ahead," she said softly. "Take it. I know you have a lot on your plate." He shook his head, forcing a smile. "It can wait. This is more important." Mia's chest tightened with gratitude, but also a pang of guilt. She wondered how often Jared was forced to choose between the demands of his corporation and these precious moments with his child, moments he'd missed so many of before. She could sense he was walking a tightrope, determined not to let them down but also aware of the monumental responsibilities that awaited him outside these walls. After they ordered lunch, Jared's phone buzzed again. This time he glanced at it and Mia saw a flicker of concern cross his features. He cleared his throat, carefully pocketing the device. "We have a major deal closing next week. And, well, we hit a snag. Nothing too catastrophic, but it's time-sensitive." Mia nodded, trying to keep her tone light. "Go if you need to, Jared. We can manage." He leaned forward, voice low. "I don't want to bail on you two, especially now that we've barely had a chance to be together as a family." There was a tremor of regret as he said the word family, like he still couldn't believe they deserved it. Mia placed a hand over his. "I understand your world better now, and I won't hold it against you if you have to step away to handle an emergency. You're here with us every chance you get. That means more than I can say." She hesitated, then ventured carefully, "I just don't want you to burn out trying to do everything at once." He squeezed her fingers. "Thank you. I promise I'm not going anywhere. Just maybe after lunch I'll drop you two at Talia's and then head to the office to put out some fires." He glanced at their toddler, who was merrily coloring dinosaur shapes. "But I'll be back tomorrow morning if that's okay. I want to take him to the park." Mia nodded, warmth in her eyes. That would be perfect. Their conversation shifted as the waitress brought plates of sandwiches and fries. The boy took to dipping his fries in ketchup, adding a dot of it to the dinosaur he was drawing. Jared and Mia shared an exasperated but affectionate smile, mopping up ketchup blobs before they dripped onto the booth. There, in that cozy diner corner, they felt more like a typical couple with a rambunctious toddler than a high-profile CEO and the mother of his child. After lunch, as they stepped back out into the drizzle, Mia mulled over her earlier worries about being in the public eye. One or two passers-by glanced at Jared, clearly recognizing him, but they kept moving when they noticed the small family in tow. Mia relaxed, relieved that no big scene ensued. They drove the short distance to Talia's, the car growing quieter as their son dozed off again. Playing that hard always tired him out. Jared parked, then twisted in his seat to face Mia. "I wish I could stay longer," he said softly. "You're staying plenty," she reassured him. "We'll see you in the morning." He hesitated, eyes trailing to the child. "Before I leave, can I carry him inside?" Mia's heart pinched at the sweetness of his request. "Of course." Carefully, Jared unbuckled the dozing toddler and lifted him into his arms. Mia led the way to the front door, fiddling with keys. Talia wasn't home yet, so the house was dim and quiet. Jared stepped in, gently placing the boy on the living room couch so he could nap. Mia found a soft blanket to cover him, tucking it around his shoulders. They hovered for a moment, both watching their child breathe softly, reminded of the beautiful normalcy they were forging. Stepping away from the couch, Jared lowered his voice, brushing a light hand against Mia's arm. "Thank you for letting me take him out today," he whispered. "I know it's strange, juggling my public persona with being his dad, but I promise I'll keep him safe, both of you." Mia nodded, swallowing a surge of emotion. "I appreciate that, and I'm proud of you for stepping into this so wholeheartedly." She paused, summoning a small, wry smile. "I guess you don't do anything halfway, do you?" He chuckled under his breath. "Apparently not." Then, more earnestly, "I'll be back tomorrow. Text me if you need anything. Really." She nodded, heart fluttering at the protective note in his voice. "I will." With one last look at their sleeping son, Jared slipped out. The door closed gently behind him, and Mia released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She crossed to the window, watching him disappear down the sidewalk toward his waiting car. Yes, it was a precarious balance. His empire, her independence, and this sweet child caught in the crosshairs of their changing lives. Mia couldn't deny the worry lurking beneath her contentment. What if Jared's corporate world eventually overshadowed his newfound devotion? But each time she revisited that thought, she came back to the memory of Jared, diving into foam pits or carefully carrying their sleeping son, eyes shining with love. And for now, that was enough to keep her doubts at bay. She returned to the couch, stroking her boy's hair while he napped. Outside, the rain fell in a steady patter. In that moment, she felt something rare. Hope, steady as the rhythm of the raindrops. She finally understood that she and Jared were building something real, something that, with care, could survive the storms of life and let all three of them grow together. By the time dawn broke on the following morning, the sky had cleared to a pale, crisp blue. Mia stood in the living room, arms folded as she stared at the sunlight spilling through the front window. Jared was due to arrive any minute. Today's plan involved a trip to the local park, where their son could run wild on the playground. She could practically hear the little boy upstairs rattling around with Talia, excitedly getting dressed. The doorknob rattled. Mia felt a spike of anticipation but realized it was only Talia stepping in, carrying a paper bag of groceries. "He's so amped about Daddy's visit," Talia announced with a fond grin. "He insisted on wearing a shirt with dinosaurs on it. Shockingly." Mia laughed softly. "Of course he did." She helped Talia set the groceries on the kitchen counter, grateful that Talia and her husband had made them feel so welcome over these last few weeks. Part of Mia wondered if she should start looking for a place of her own in Chicago, something more permanent. But with Jared in the picture, so much was uncertain. Would he want them to relocate back to his primary city? Or was he more open to dividing his time between two places? Before she could dwell on that question for too long, a soft knock sounded at the front door. Mia glanced at the clock. It was exactly the time Jared had promised. She felt a little jolt of both comfort and anxiety, because if there was one thing Jared Bennett was known for, besides his corporate triumphs, it was punctuality. She opened the door to find Jared on the porch, dressed casually in jeans and a light jacket, a baseball cap in his hand. He offered a half-smile that reached his eyes. "Morning," he said, stepping in and closing the door behind him. "I hope I'm not too early." "Not at all," Mia replied, stepping aside so he could pass. A subtle warmth spread in her chest at the sight of him. "He should be down any minute. You ready for a playground adventure?" Jared chuckled, slipping the cap on. "As ready as I'll ever be. I haven't climbed monkey bars in years, but I'll give it my best shot." They shared a moment of mutual amusement before the thunder of little footsteps barreled down the stairs. Their son appeared, indeed wearing a bright green dinosaur t-shirt, practically vibrating with excitement. "Daddy!" he shouted, running forward. Jared bent down, bracing himself for the exuberant collision, returning the hug with equal enthusiasm. "You ready, buddy?" Jared asked, ruffling the child's hair. "We've got slides, swings, maybe even a sandbox to conquer." "Yeah!" the boy exclaimed, eyes shining. Mia couldn't help but smile at the scene. She caught Talia's gaze from the kitchen, where her sister discreetly watched, a supportive tilt to her eyebrows. Talia mouthed, "Have fun," then turned away, giving them privacy. The drive to the park was short but filled with chatter. Their son insisted on reciting random dinosaur facts he'd gleaned from picture books, often repeating the words incorrectly in ways that made Mia and Jared smother their laughter. Mia sat in the back seat with the boy, partly to keep him occupied and partly because Jared seemed more at ease if he had the chance to glance back and see them both. They arrived at a modest neighborhood park ringed by old oak trees. A handful of families were out, pushing strollers or guiding toddlers. No one seemed to register Jared as anything more than an attentive father, just another parent enjoying a Saturday morning. Relief fluttered through Mia. Perhaps the fresh air and open space would keep them out of the public eye for a while. The boy dashed straight for the playground equipment, zeroing in on a tall slide. "Look, Mommy, look!" he yelled, dragging Mia by the hand. Jared trailed behind, hands in his pockets, an amused grin dancing at the corners of his mouth. For a while they simply played. Their son climbed up the slide's ladder, slid down with a whoosh, then ran back around again, each trip igniting fresh squeals. Mia stood at the bottom, ready to steady him if he stumbled. Jared hovered on the side, half enjoying the spectacle, half scanning the park for any sign of cameras or intrusions. Eventually, Jared leaned close to Mia. "I'm going to join him on the jungle gym," he said with a hint of childlike excitement, tugging off his jacket. "Keep an eye on me in case I fall and break something." She laughed, stepping aside so he could weave onto the play structure. With cautious enthusiasm, Jared followed the boy's lead, climbing up platforms and crawling through little tunnels. The toddler cackled every time Jared pretended to struggle, as though the equipment were too small for him. The sincerity of Jared's laughter was a sound Mia savored, so different from the polite corporate chuckle she'd seen him use at public events. This was real, a man discovering fatherhood with honest delight. When the child tired of the playground, Mia suggested a walk around the park's paved path. Jared hoisted the boy onto his shoulders, and the three of them strolled under the shade of trees, leaves just beginning to turn the gold and russet hues of early autumn. The boy squealed each time Jared bounced him, chanting, "I'm so tall, I'm so tall." "Careful, you'll give him a thrill he can't come down from," Mia teased, watching them with fondness. Jared gave an exaggerated shrug. "Hey, if he wants the full daddy experience, might as well deliver." He turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze with a spark of happiness in his eyes. "I love this," he added in a softer tone. "I can't believe I missed out on it for so long." Mia's heart clenched. She reached up, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "We're here now," she whispered. They rounded a bend near a small duck pond where Mia suggested they pause so their son could watch the waterfowl. Jared set the boy down gently, and the child toddled over to the pond's edge, enthralled by the ducks skimming across the surface. Mia sidled closer to Jared. "Will you be traveling again soon?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. She knew enough about his corporation to realize that major expansions or deals often took him to different states or countries on short notice. He sighed, eyeing the toddler to make sure he stayed clear of the water's edge. "I might have to fly out next week for a couple of days. There's a negotiation in Dallas that needs my final signature, but I promise it won't be long." He paused, expression turning thoughtful. I've been thinking about setting up a base here in Chicago, so I can be more present. Maybe rent an apartment or suite so I can stay longer chunks of time." Surprise flickered in Mia's eyes. "Jared, that's a big step," she said, though she couldn't deny the leap of hope in her chest. He nodded, glancing at her from beneath his cap. "I know, but if I want to be a real father, not just some occasional visitor, I need to adjust my life, right?" A hint of a smile tugged at his lips. "I can't expect you both to uproot everything, so it might be time I make the move." Mia's breath caught. She wondered how easy that would be for a man with a global enterprise, disentangling himself from daily operations in his main city. But the sincerity in his gaze told her he was serious. She swallowed the urge to ask too many questions and simply said, "That would mean a lot, but I don't want you to risk your company's future." Jared gave a small shrug. "I've built enough structure to delegate some tasks. Yes, it's complicated, but it's not impossible." He hesitated, eyes flicking back to the boy who was now trying to mimic the quacking ducks. "I want us to be a family, and families don't exist only on weekends." That simple statement warmed Mia from the inside out. She looped her arm through Jared's. "Thank you," she whispered. She wanted to say more, about how proud she was of him, or how this gesture made her believe they might truly forge a real path together. But the words got lost in her throat, replaced by emotion. They stood side by side watching their little boy as he discovered the joys of feeding breadcrumbs to curious ducks that paddled near. An older couple passed by, smiling at the scene, no hint of recognition crossing their faces. To them, Mia and Jared were just another set of parents sharing a quiet morning in the park with their child. The normalcy felt profoundly precious. Eventually, the boy tired of the ducks and raced back toward Mia and Jared, arms open wide. Jared hoisted him up, placing him on his hip, and Mia laughed as the boy's small hands patted Jared's cheeks. "Daddy, I'm hungry," the child announced, face earnest. "Hungry, huh?" Jared echoed, turning an amused look to Mia. "We'd better find some lunch, unless your Aunt Talia already has something waiting." Mia glanced at the time on her phone, realizing it was nearly noon. "We could head back. Talia was planning to make a big weekend brunch. She's texted me a couple times asking if we're going to be around." Jared nodded, turning back toward the parking lot. "Sounds perfect. Let's do it." They arrived at Talia's place to find a cheerful chaos in the kitchen. Talia flipping pancakes, her husband setting out plates, and various toddler squeals from Talia's child echoing in the dining area. The whole place smelled of maple syrup and scrambled eggs. Mia's son charged in, proclaiming that he had quacked at ducks today, receiving a chorus of "That's adorable" in reply. Jared, trailing in behind, offered Talia a polite but warm greeting. She glanced at him, reading the relaxed contentment in his expression, and shot Mia a conspiratorial grin. "Park was a success, I see," Talia teased, eyeing the streak of grass on Jared's jeans. He laughed, unembarrassed. "I climbed around the playground more than I expected. Kids are serious business." They gathered around Talia's dining table, the 4 adults and 2 children forming a lively group. Mia's little boy insisted on recounting every detail of the morning, from the slides to the ducks. Jared interjected now and then, clarifying or adding a playful exaggeration. The conversation wove seamlessly, as though they'd been doing family brunches forever. At one point, Talia's husband turned to Jared and asked about his work, curious to hear about the life of a CEO. Jared answered politely, giving a summary of his role, but he didn't linger on the subject. Instead, he seemed more eager to keep the focus on the children and the silly stories from that morning's adventure. Mia observed him, grateful that he wasn't letting business overshadow these moments. Near the end of the meal, Talia raised a joking toast with her coffee mug. "To new family traditions," she said, winking at Mia and Jared. Mia blushed, but Jared lifted his own mug, tapping it against Talia's. "Here, here," he agreed, meeting Mia's eyes across the table, sending a ripple of warmth through her. Afterward, they migrated to the living room. The kids played with blocks again, occasionally skirmishing over which one got the bigger tower. Jared hung back quietly for a few minutes, phone in hand. Mia could tell he was checking email or messages, perhaps about that upcoming Dallas trip. Eventually, he sighed and pocketed the device. "I've got to make a conference call soon," he said, regret shading his tone. "But I'll do it from the car and maybe come back later if you're okay with that." Mia's chest squeezed. She loved how committed he was. "Of course, just text me. We'll be here." He crouched to say goodbye to their son, gently reminding the child that Daddy had to work but would return soon. The boy seemed used to the routine by now, protesting only mildly before returning to his blocks. Jared stood, exchanging a soft, meaningful look with Mia. In the hallway, before he slipped out, he rested a hand lightly on her arm. "I've missed so much, Mia," he murmured. I'm determined not to miss any more." Her eyes glistened with emotion. "We'll be waiting," she said, voice quiet. He pressed a quick, tentative kiss to her cheek, a gesture so subtle she barely registered it until the warmth bloomed across her face. Then he was gone, the door clicking softly behind him. Mia stood there, breath catching. The kiss had been fleeting, but it felt like yet another line was blurring between them. Parents, yes, but maybe something more. She let her hand drift to where his lips had brushed her skin, heart thumping an unsteady rhythm. Stepping back into the living room, she found Talia arched an eyebrow in amusement. Mia simply shook her head, cheeks burning, and joined the children on the floor. Inside, though, she buzzed with a dawning awareness that she and Jared were not just forging a path for their son's sake, they were, in quiet ways, re-exploring the spark that once connected them. The pattern of Jared dropping by became a steady rhythm over the next couple of weeks, sporadic but reassuring. Sometimes he arrived after a long day of back-to-back meetings, other times on a whim during a mid-afternoon break. Each time he knocked lightly, flashed a grateful smile, and stepped into Talia's living room, looking simultaneously exhausted and uplifted by the sight of his son. Mia started to notice small, subtle changes in Jared. The once impeccable suits were occasionally swapped out for more casual attire. She'd see him glance at his phone and then deliberately put it face down on the table, giving his child complete focus. She watched him grow more confident in fatherly tasks, like buckling the boy into his car seat or rummaging through the fridge for a juice box. It was as though he was shedding layers of corporate armor to embrace this new identity. One evening, after the boy had crashed from a busy day at the park, Mia and Jared found themselves alone in Talia's living room. Talia had gone out with her husband, and the children were already asleep upstairs, meaning the house was unexpectedly quiet, shadows stretching along the walls. Jared glanced around, taking note of the cozy clutter, stray toys, a stack of children's books, and a small hamper of laundry Mia had been folding earlier. He sank onto the couch. "I almost forgot what a normal life can feel like," he confessed softly, gesturing at the remnants of daily family chaos. "My condo is so sterile, no toys, no crayons, no—" He broke off, a self-conscious laugh escaping him. Mia settled in the armchair opposite, tucking her legs beneath her. "I'm sorry," she teased gently. "We've gotten used to stepping over toy blocks and race cars here." "Don't apologize," he said quickly, sincerity in his gaze. "I envy it, actually. The warmth, the mess. It feels alive, human." He paused, tapping his fingers on his knee. "I want something like this. Not just for visits, but a real home with my son. And maybe—" He trailed off, looking at her in a way that made her heart flutter. "And maybe?" she prompted, voice hushed. "Maybe with you," he admitted. His eyes were cautious, searching hers for permission to continue. "I'm not trying to rush us. I know we have a complicated history, and we're just now adjusting to co-parenting, but I can't pretend I'm not feeling all of this." Her pulse leaped. Those words, he cared, beyond fatherhood, about her. She inhaled, trying to form a coherent response despite the swirl of emotion. "Jared, I feel it too," she finally managed. "These last weeks, seeing you with him, and seeing how you've changed, it reminds me of why I was drawn to you in the first place. That old spark." He gave a tremulous smile. "It never really went away from me, Mia. I buried it under obligations and travel and corporate expansions. But now that I see you again, see who you've become, what an incredible mother you are, I feel like I'm rediscovering the best part of my life." Her cheeks warmed. She pressed her lips together, uncertainty flickering across her features. "So, what do we do?" Jared leaned forward, propping his elbows on his knees. "I think we take it slow. Keep focusing on our son, making sure he's happy and secure. But also, Maybe we let ourselves explore this second chance. No pressure, no forcing it. Just letting things grow if they're meant to. Mia let out a soft breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Slow, she repeated, relief in her voice. I'd like that. We've spent so long apart. We should really get to know each other again. He nodded, a hint of tension lifting from his shoulders. Exactly. Their eyes locked for a moment in the quiet living room, the unspoken possibility hanging between them. Mia felt her heart quivering with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She'd never imagined that telling Jared about their son would lead to the rekindling of such a deep connection. But here they were, cautiously stepping toward a new future. It felt both surreal and somehow fated. She rose from the armchair, crossing over to the couch, sitting beside Jared. I think we owe it to ourselves, and to him, to at least try, she said gently. Jared shifted closer. In the dim glow of the single lamp, his face looked softer, more open than the boardroom image the world knew him by. We do, he agreed. He lifted a hand, almost like he wanted to brush back a strand of her hair, but hesitated, seeking her silent permission. Her pulse thudded, but she leaned in, letting the warmth of his palm rest against her cheek. His thumb grazed her skin, and 1,000 memories flickered behind her eyes. Hazy beach sunsets from years ago, stolen kisses, laughter shared at 2 a.m. She felt the stirrings of that old closeness they once shared, woven now with a newer, deeper layer of life experience and responsibility. Before either of them could speak again, a soft cry came from upstairs. Their son, stirring from his sleep, perhaps having a small nightmare or disoriented by the quiet house. Mia gently withdrew, shooting Jared an apologetic smile. I'll check on him. He nodded, letting his hand fall away. Of course. Mia ascended the stairs, finding her toddler half awake, tangled in blankets. She soothed him with hushed words, stroking his hair until he settled back into steady breathing. By the time she returned downstairs, she found Jared standing near the front door, jacket in hand. A hint of regret shaded his features. I think I'll go, he said quietly. It's late, and you both need rest. Mia understood. Right. Okay. She stepped closer, meeting his eyes. Call me tomorrow? He smiled, albeit a bit wistfully. I will. Then, with gentle caution, he leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. It was a wordless promise, patient, yet filled with promise. She stayed in the doorway as he slipped out into the night, the lamp behind her illuminating the moment. When the door finally closed, Mia set her back against it, letting the torrent of emotions wash over her. In one single evening, they had gone from polite co-parenting to openly acknowledging a deeper connection. It felt both exhilarating and fragile. By the time she headed upstairs, checking once more that her child was soundly asleep, she couldn't shake the conviction that something profound was shifting in her life. The boy's gentle breathing reminded her that he was the anchor of everything, yet her heart pulsed with the certainty that Jared might be the missing piece she'd never fully let go of. She crawled into bed, hugging a pillow tightly, her mind drifting over the possibilities of what slowly could mean. Maybe it meant dinners as a trio, eventually building up to nights where Jared stayed over, mornings where they all woke under the same roof. But just as swiftly as the daydreams blossomed, a voice of caution reminded her. This was new territory, full of responsibilities and complicated by Jared's empire. She couldn't afford to be swept away by romance alone. Still, the memory of his touch, the earnestness in his gaze, and the simple fact that he wanted to stay in Chicago all served as powerful counterweights to her fears. She closed her eyes, letting herself imagine a future where every day was filled with her son's laughter and Jared's steady presence by her side. A few more weeks slipped by, each passing day confirming the delicate new reality Mia and Jared were constructing. Their son, now fully accustomed to calling Jared Daddy, bounded around in a joyful bubble whenever he sensed Jared's presence nearby. Talia's once quiet brownstone often buzzed with shared meals, laughter, and the steady hum of grown-up conversations taking place in hushed corners while the kids played. Still, the rest of the world hadn't vanished. Jared's corporate duties loomed, demanding frequent calls, emails, and short flights to handle business obligations. Mia juggled her freelance projects with the day-to-day demands of motherhood, acutely aware that soon she needed to plan her next steps. She couldn't stay at Talia's forever, and Jared, though fully dedicated, was still feeling out how to split his life between two cities. One Friday evening, after a particularly long week for both of them, Jared invited Mia and their son to spend Saturday at a quiet lakefront cabin he'd rented on the outskirts of the city, a place he hoped would give them space to talk, away from prying eyes or bustle. Talia insisted on having her own family outing, offering them the freedom to go without worrying about house logistics. Mia found herself surprisingly nervous as she packed an overnight bag for her child, filling it with spare clothes, a few favorite toys, and plenty of snacks. Jared picked them up the next morning, guiding his sedan through scenic roads until they reached a secluded spot where tall pines and maples towered, their leaves turning gold and red. The small cabin overlooked a glassy lake, its surface reflecting the crisp autumn sky. "Wow," Mia murmured, stepping out of the car. The air smelled of pine needles and the faint tang of wood smoke. "This is beautiful. I didn't know places like this existed so close to the city." Jared shrugged, a subtle smile tugging at his lips. "I discovered it a while ago but never really used it. Figured now might be the perfect time." Their son jumped out, chasing a swirl of leaves that scuttled across the gravel. Jared grabbed a couple of bags from the trunk, gesturing for Mia to follow him up the short wooden steps to the cabin's porch. Inside, the space was cozy, with a small living area, a fireplace, and large windows overlooking the lake. A modest kitchen sat to one side, stocked with the basics. "This is amazing," Mia whispered. Their child pressed his face to the window, delighted by the sight of squirrels scampering up a tree. Meanwhile, Jared set down the bags and turned to Mia, the afternoon sunlight catching in his hair. "I'm glad you like it. I wanted to give us some quiet, maybe talk about the future." He paused, swallowing. "If you're open to that." She nodded, aware of the significance behind his words. Together, they coaxed the boy away from the window and ventured outside again, deciding to explore the property. A narrow path wound down to a small dock at the water's edge. Their son trotted ahead, squealing whenever he spotted a chipmunk darting by. The water lapped gently, reflecting the brilliant reds and oranges of fall foliage. Jared lifted the child onto the dock's railing so he could see the lake. Mia stood beside them, the crisp breeze ruffling her hair. For a moment, they just admired the serene view, letting the quiet seep in. Eventually, Jared ruffled the boy's hair and glanced at Mia. "While he's busy with the leaves, can we—" He gestured back up the hill toward a bench perched near some trees. Mia agreed, and they lured their son onto a small blanket in the grass with crayons and paper, promising they'd only be a few steps away. The child, absorbed in doodling pictures of ducks and leaves, barely noticed them slip off to the bench. They sat side by side on the wooden seat. Mia folded her hands in her lap, heart fluttering. Jared inhaled slowly, gaze sweeping over the lake. Then he turned to her. "I'm finalizing plans to open a satellite office in Chicago," he said. "It might take a couple months to staff up, but I'll be here more permanently soon." He paused, studying her face. "But there's more I've been thinking about than just offices." Mia's breath caught. "Go on." He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I know we said we'd take things slow, but I also don't want to dance around the truth. You and our son, I want to build a life with you, a real life, under one roof. I don't know if that means we find a new place together or if we fix up something we both choose, But I'm serious about us, Mia. About being partners, not just co-parents. A wave of emotion washed over her. She squeezed his hand, feeling tears prickling her eyes. Jared, that's a big step. I love the idea of a home where our son doesn't have to wonder which parent he's with on any given day. Her voice trembled with honesty. But it's also scary. We've never really had a stable relationship before. We only had that whirlwind romance years ago, and now we're jumping into full-on family life. He nodded, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek. It is scary. But the alternative, staying separate, letting you handle all the day-to-day while I come and go, I don't want that. And I don't think you do either. He paused, expression earnest. If we take it slowly, we can find a place in Chicago. We can transition your freelance work, let me delegate more of my business tasks. No rush, but the intention is there. I want us together. Mia exhaled shakily, letting the words sink in. She pictured waking up each morning with Jared beside her, their son bounding in to climb onto the bed, demanding cereal or cartoons. It was a vision so warm, so deeply craved, that it almost hurt. I want that too, she whispered, voice thick with feeling. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead against hers. We'll figure out the details, I promise. She closed her eyes, drifting in the softness of his breath against her temple. Yes, she murmured. We will. A sudden shout from below broke into their intimate moment. Mommy! Daddy! I drew a duck! Their son waved a piece of paper triumphantly, bouncing on the grass near the water's edge. They pulled apart, sharing a laugh at how swiftly real life reminded them of their anchor. Jared stood, offering Mia his hand to help her up. Arm in arm, they returned to where their son was sprawled on the blanket, crayons strewn around him. He thrust the paper at Jared, who squinted at the round shape with stick legs. That's definitely a duck, Jared confirmed playfully, making the boy giggle. Mia settled down beside their child, hooking an arm around his shoulders as he proudly pointed out the features of his scribble. Jared lowered himself as well, so they formed a small triangle on the soft grass. The lake glistened behind them, the autumn wind carrying the scent of leaves and damp earth. And in that simple tableau, parents praising a toddler's drawing under a sky painted with shifting clouds, Mia realized that their big decision, though daunting, felt right. She couldn't recall the last time she felt so content. The boy's grin was unstoppable, Jared's presence steady and comforting. Yes, it would take time to weave their separate lives into one, but they finally had a shared direction, a sense of belonging, and a home they could shape together. They spent the rest of the day exploring the lake's perimeter, tossing pebbles into the water and letting the boy chase after fallen leaves. At sunset, Jared built a small fire in the cabin's stone fireplace. He and Mia sat on a couch, their son curled between them, munching on marshmallows. In the flickering glow, the child drifted off, lulled by the warmth and the day's excitement. Mia watched as Jared carefully scooped up the sleeping boy, carrying him to a makeshift bed they'd set up in the cabin's single bedroom. When he returned, he settled beside Mia in the firelight, a hush draping the room. The closeness between them simmered with unspoken depth, no longer just a second chance but the beginning of a shared future they were writing one choice at a time. He kissed her softly, a tender gesture that spoke volumes. She leaned into him, letting the crackle of the fire and the rhythmic breathing of their sleeping son wrap them in a cocoon of comfort. For so long she'd believed their moment had passed, overshadowed by misunderstandings and lost years. But here they were, forging an entirely new story, a love story that now included the most important person in both their lives, the little boy with the unstoppable smile who called them Mommy and Daddy. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.